Hi, everyone. Welcome to the monthly metrics meeting at the Wikimedia Foundation. My name is Jake Orlowitz, and I run the Wikipedia Library project in the Community Engagement Department. And I think this is kind of a special day in a way. It's our fall fundraising party tonight, and it got me thinking that it was our great Anna Stillwell put a slide deck together. What should we talk to the donors about? And it wasn't a talking points. It was a question. Why do you give? And I thought that this was really the right place to begin because we all give for different reasons. Our donors give, our volunteers give, our affiliates give, and we as staff give. And we're here for the why. That's what brings us here, the mission and the people and the knowledge. So I just think this is a great session we have today because we're going to highlight a lot of stories about why people give and what they give. And that's what this is all about. So here's our agenda for today. It's jam-packed. You're welcome. We've got Jimmy and Lila giving talks today, a strategy update, a community update, a metrics update, and a showcase of the fantastic content translation tool. And then we'll have some time for questions and answers. I want to welcome our new hires, new staff, and new contractors, Zachary McCune in comms, Chris Schilling in community engagement, Jan Bruniak in engineering, Gretchen Holtman in advancement, Natalie Cadranel in advancement, Mohammed Abdullah in community engagement, and Morgan Ju in community engagement. Welcome, everyone. Also, happy birthdays. We have some anniversaries. Megan Hernandez, 6 years. Woo! Winifred Olaf, 5 years. Kim Gill, 3 years. And Amanda Bittaker, Grace Gellerman, Jacob Rogers, Jerry Kim, Julia Barbara, Nahara Kokoli, Sandra George, and Stas Malashev, all celebrating their 1-year anniversary here. And I'm going to hand it over to Jimmy and Lila.
Thanks so much, Jake. So I'm really excited that Jimmy is here today with us, and hopefully we'll actually end up with some time for Q&A later today. And we wanted to, Jimmy travels a ton, I traveled quite a bit lately, and we wanted to focus not on so much on us, but on some of the incredible community members that either we met directly or heard of through all of you who are also closer to the community.
Okay, great. So we just, as I'm sure all of you or most of you know, Wikipedia won the very prestigious Princess of Asturias Award. It's roughly the Spanish equivalent of the Nobel Prize, and so it's a really huge deal, particularly in Spain, but actually all across the Spanish-speaking world. There was a lot of press coverage and a lot of interest. And so we went, they invited us to come with some community members, and so Patricio and Lila and I were there. We have some community members with us, which we'll tell you about. And this woman here was really, really great, really sweet. She's a certain type of Wikipedian that I've met many places in many countries around the world. So Lourdes is her name. She is now age 75, and she is the longest running contributor to Spanish Wikipedia. She's been around since 2003.
More energy than a 5-year-old.
Yeah, and so I actually, it's one of the things I think when you really start to dig into the community dynamics, I see this in a lot of places that, as we all know, we have a gender imbalance with a lot more men than women, and also a lot of young men in their 20s, and sometimes they need a grandmother figure to keep them all straight. And so she's quite beloved in Spanish Wikipedia. We met her, so she edits on a variety of topics, but in particular those that fall in the subject areas of fine arts and geography. She studied French philology and music in Madrid, and she's worked as an elementary school teacher. So what I love about someone like her is that she is sometimes not the model of user that we have in mind when we're thinking about our user base. But she and people like her obviously are very important. There's a photo shoot.
And in my travel in Japan, I met with Kitamura Sai. She's a quite incredible contributor. She started as a lecturer at University of Tokyo, and during her time there, she created a Wikipedia translation class project, and she got really passionate and involved with open data and open information movement. And when University of Tokyo decided to cut her grant for that type of project, she actually decided to leave and pursue her passion and to look for the way she could contribute to the open movement. And she started to work and make connections with universities and governments to release more open information so that her students could use it and in their Wikipedia work. So she's quite remarkable, and her work is just absolutely astonishing.
So G, we met him as well. He came to the award ceremony in Spain. He's a naturalist and a frequent contributor to Wikimedia Commons. He's from Kerala, and he loves taking pictures of bugs. This is his main thing. He has uploaded over 1,100 pictures to Wikimedia Commons. 150 are now classified as meeting quality image standard, with close to 40 of them reaching featured picture status by the Commons community. He's an admin on Commons, and he's an active advocate for improved culture and respect on the project, which is quite important. One of the great fun stories about him is that he helped to identify a new species of dragonfly. So he was out, he does these projects and he goes out and takes photos. He identified a dragonfly. They were trying to figure out what it is. One of the things, when I had a long chat with him, one of the reasons he likes contributing, he used to upload pictures to Flickr, but by contributing at Wikimedia Commons and through the Wikipedia community, he actually then has access to a community of people who are really passionate and are experts about insects, and so he's able to get help in figuring out what things are. They actually couldn't figure out what the particular, I assume, is this the one? Somebody else picked the picture.
I'm not sure.
Well, let's assume it's this one. They couldn't quite identify it. They found a naturalist in the Netherlands who is the expert on this particular type of fly, and they determined it was, in fact, a new species. In this genus, there's only 2 other identified species, so it's the 3rd one of this particular group, which is kind of amazing. When asked about his motivation to contribute, he says simply, "I like the idea of collecting and preserving knowledge and making it freely available to anyone who needs it." What a really sweet guy. He had never been outside of India, so it was his first time leaving India. And we were at this little event, and I told the king, I said, "I really want you to meet this guy." And so he got to meet the king, and the king said, "Oh, I understand this is your first time out of India." So it was really a great moment for him. Very, very sweet guy. He told me some information about his personal life, nothing particularly remarkable, I didn't think. He actually sent me an apology later, saying, "I'm so sorry that I sort of blurted out all my personal information," which is indicative, and the lesson I learned from that is, again, it's the kind of thing we don't usually think about our contributors, but his culture is very different. He's from a culture where sharing some personal information, nothing really that any American would just blurt out. It was like a big deal. And he felt he needed to apologize for being so familiar. And so, interesting. I love him.
Yeah, and this is really a theme throughout every Wikipedian that I meet, which is really incredible. And Ravan Jafar Altai, who a lot of you probably know from your visits to Wikimania, because she's a frequent visitor there, taught me recently something really important, something that makes a lot of sense, and I sort of knew, but I never verbalized, and that is. Her experience with Wikipedia, even though she edits, she actually learns from editing, right? So it's a learning experience whether you edit or whether you read, and that's an incredible insight, for most of you probably is very obvious, and for me, for some reason, the light bulb went off. She's really amazing. She's actually an engineer, a chemical engineer from Erbil, Iraq. And she has been editing Arabic Wikipedia since 2008. So she's been really fundamental. She's also a female admin on Arabic Wikipedia. She is incredibly curious. I've met her. I met her before, but she was at the award ceremony, and Coppola spent probably a good 40 minutes with her, and he wouldn't talk much to anybody else. So she's fascinating and full of life and incredible, and she's behind a lot of Wiki Arabia events, and she's been fundamental to moving this last event into Jordan so that more people could get visas and attend, including Israelis. So she's just absolutely an incredible human being. Another person that I wanted to highlight was Manjai Lee. He's in Korea, and you can see actually by the fonts here. Manjai does not edit, but he's a scientist. He's a former professor of computer science and currently a distinguished fellow at Seoul National University. And now he's involved with the Wikimedia chapter there. What he did, because his background is in data sciences and knowledge mapping, he built this tool to show all of the different interlinking and connections on Wikipedia. And they're trying to translate it now to make it available for English. This is kind of the heart of Wikipedia, all of these links that there's a blood system that connect to each other, and he made it visible and explorable. If you click on different nodes, you know, they zoom in and you can really, really explore.
So this is Polana Sanchez. She is an active Spanish Wikipedia editor from Mexico, and her big thing is, I'm not sure how to pronounce, I'm not good at Spanish, editathons, and she runs these editathons, and she started doing it, she was asked to join. This is how she got started in Wikipedia. She went to an editathon for women, she got involved in that, and then within a month, she thought it was such a great idea. She was conducting her own workshops on how to edit. Medical bioscience student at National Autonomous University of Mexico. And she was actually attracted to Wikipedia, as you might imagine, having come through the editathon route, an editathon for women to edit Wikipedia. This is what attracted her, the gap in coverage of female biologists, such as herself. And so she runs these editathons. Many of them are, she encourages people to edit in the area of her interest, but also to edit in whatever area that they may be interested in. So she's one of the kinds of people who can help us begin to move forward and solve the issue of imbalance in participation.
And finally, Lionel Arge. He is from France, and he's a French programmer and a photographer. And he devised a system for taking pictures, aerial pictures of different locations in France. And one of the most notorious one, the Palace of Versailles, did not have any open pictures, aerial open pictures online anywhere. So Lionel decided to fix that. So he attached the camera to the drone, he took a lot of pictures, and voila, we have these astonishing pictures of Versailles, and thanks to him. He does much more than that. He got involved with GLAM and is contributing very, very interesting work there with museums and galleries. And an incredible innovation coming out from our contributors in the community, something that we would have never imagined, and just such an inspiring and incredible work.
I'm going to go sit down. It's Lila's part. He asked if I had anything to say at this moment. I'm really looking forward to Q&A, but I'm going to sit and watch Lila.
Thank you. So I wanted to really briefly address some of the things that have been coming up to me since I got back. I really value my time with interacting with our communities. It helps me understand much more about who we are and what is important, but also bring us closer to both our affiliates and our community. And it's really started to heal some of the disjoints that have been happening, especially in the affiliate territory. But when I came back, I realized that I made a mistake in spending that much time out there, and that you needed more support and more of my time right now, more than probably ever. So I heard a lot of your voices, and thank you for letting me know about this, because not everywhere you have the gift of people coming up to you and saying, hey, this is broken, fix it. So I was listening to your commentary both online, and also talked to a lot of you since I got back in town. So I really, really appreciate everything that you had to tell me. And here are a couple of things that I think are going to help us in the next little while, but something that we should also probably retain much more. So first of all, thank you for giving me your feedback. Thank you for letting me know about it. And number one, communication. What communication? Communication is really hard. I have to tell you, especially the online communication. And I am more than anybody else is guilty of this. I use shorthands. I get one-liners. They get misinterpreted. So something that I've started doing, and you've noticed, started a few weeks ago, is sending longer updates about what's going on. Where's Lila? What's going on with her and her team, and what is on the priority list at the moment, and what is she struggling with? So you're seeing some of them coming through, and it's great that in the last one, a lot of you have engaged. And as I read through that thread, I also found other things that needed to be done. So a couple of things that we've done very recently. We are pulling up HR function back to the C-level, so we can hear. HR is our venue for hearing your voices as part of the executive team, and that is what we're doing effective immediately. It's one of our first steps. The next thing that's going to happen, and unfortunately Jody and Brianna are not here today, but we're setting up a conversation for Monday to have it with all of you. We are launching a culture survey that will allow you to bring your voice into the conversation, to tell us exactly what you want to see changed, what is working, what do you want to see more of, so we can hear your feedback. It will be completely confidential, held by third party, and Brianna and Jody will explain exactly how it works, so that you can have confidence in the results. Fourth one, really cool. I'm really excited about that. I've been waiting. It's actually been a lot of work to get this done. For those of you who are not involved, there's been a lot of work to put the process in place. Remember, last year we said that we're going to put into place a product development process that will help us identify when do we need to release information at the minimum, and where do we need to release it, so that we can make it shareable and accessible and visible to everyone, not just in our organization, but the world at large, and definitely for community to give us feedback. So we just completed that work, and as part of that work, we wanted to remove Super Protect. Super Protect set up a precedent of mistrust, and this is something that was really important for us to remove, to at least come back to the baseline of a relationship where we're working together, we're one community, to create a better process, to make sure that we can move together faster, and everybody is part of that process, and everybody is part of that conversation, not just us here at the WMF. And finally, a lot of you have been asking a lot of questions about strategy, about culture, about all of those questions. And there were a couple of requests to start to dig deeper. And actually, some of that has been on our roadmap to do. But I'm hearing your urgency here. And please mark your calendars for Monday. We're going to have an all-hands Q&A predominantly around both of those topics. And then starting that very Friday, we're going to have smaller meetings in groups of 20 to give feedback both and to ask questions specifically on the strategy that I'm going to highlight for you in about 1 second. So one of your key feedbacks was that you are all really hungry for that synthesis of the strategy. The way that the process worked over the last year is that we've done a lot of research. Probably every single person around here did something for it in one form or another. So I know that Jan and Siko, for example, early in the year led 2 research groups that gave us a lot of information about our readers and about our editors. We did a consultation that engaged more than 1,300 readers from 1,300 people from all over the world, both readers and very, very senior contributors. We did workshops with thought leaders. We did workshops with scientists. We did workshops with community members. We did workshops with donors. And this is a sea of information that we went through. And then we started trying to distill this to some of the fundamental and very high-level pillars. So what I'm going to put in front of you today, and I'm hoping that they didn't remove my draft slides, I'm going to put in front of you a draft. This is the draft that I'm going to show to the board tomorrow, but I'm going to show it to all of you today because you want to see it, and there's no reason not to. So let's dig in a little bit. Please keep in mind, this is still a very, very raw draft. It's just, you might get confused, but I hope not too much. And it's going to be an opportunity for us to tune and learn. One reminder that I wanted to put in place, our strategy process is cyclical. When we decided last year how we're going to build the strategy going forward, we decided it's going to be different from last time. It's not a 5-year plan. It is a vision for where we want to go, and then a yearly cadence of updating this vision that results in yearly goals, basically, that go into the annual plan. And the goals we build all of this collaboratively. But hopefully we don't need to update the strategy proper for many years to come. And we're about here. So according to this cadence, we're sort of in the right place. We've slipped some of the milestones there, but we're getting back on track. And that process will repeat every year. But when I first got to the WMF, what we have done, because we knew we're going to have a gap between the new strategy and the old strategy, we've put together the call to action, which is serving as our current working strategy. The call to action that we put into place last February lasts us about 18 months. In other words, it will last us until the new annual plan goes in place. So it's really important for us to get this done and distilled now so we can build the annual plan for the next year once this expires. So what I'm going to put in front of you today is the synthesis, and it's a draft, so please take it as such. So just to review the high-level principles. When we first started with the strategy, we wanted to make sure that the vision and the mission still make sense. And of course they do. We are here. Why are we here? We're here to bring knowledge to every human being in a participatory way. That's our why. Are we there yet? No. And our mission as a foundation, and this is the essence of it, is still incredibly relevant. In fact, it is more relevant today than it has ever before, in my opinion, because this piece is focused more on the educational content, and our mission to really bring that content, make it available to every human being in the world. Why? Because this world is changing so rapidly. And the human condition really depends on individuals' ability to learn. I often say air, water, knowledge. It's not even shelter, that's the next thing. It's knowledge, because with knowledge you can get shelter. So our thinking is really focused on helping every human find that path to knowledge, to get into the knowledge ecosystem that the people that we were talking to in the beginning are a part of, and that is really changing their lives. And as a result, ours. So the strategy is making knowledge more accessible to more people in ways that help them engage best. Hopefully, make it also fun. But in our world, knowledge does not stand alone. It does not exist without reach. It does not thrive without communities. So knowledge is a path that starts with that impulse to learn, but every step on that pathway matters. So things like reaching readers is critical to contributors. So reach, community, knowledge is how we distill this path. We have some challenges. This path is not without some treachery. You know all of this, challenges with readership, challenges with editorship, and the growth of knowledge around the world is very rapid and is accelerating, which is threatening to outpace our editing capacity. So if we look at rich community knowledge, they are focused on those, and they are aligned with those strategic challenges as well. We need to engage more people globally, bringing people into the fold that are in areas that are just now coming online and who need the knowledge the most. We need to facilitate communities at scale, and the operative word here, facilitate. Not replace, not redo, but facilitate, enable more communities to grow, and focus on impact that those communities can make. And finally, we need to open and include broader content for that knowledge, because knowledge in different parts of the world is different. And what our community consultation told us is that there are different formats and different languages that are really, really important to it. So, okay, let's put some meat on this. What does this mean? How would we look at it in really more tangible ways? And all of this, of course, is going to be open for you guys to, and our communities, to alter, to change, and to comment on. So here's an example, and this is just an example. It's like, what would we need to do to reach more people globally? We need to understand what those global users actually need. We have very poor tools right now to really understand it. Most of them are actually living within our community department and a little bit in our comms, because people are actually talking directly there, but this is ad hoc. This is not something that's programmatic. We need to continue work on developing new interfaces like mobile, but probably different formats, ones that are suitable for people as the world is changing. We need to understand and partner for content distributions and awareness, and we already have programs in this place. So existing programs like Wikipedia Zero and education program are really important here, but there could be other partnerships that we may need to explore, and that those two can scale much more broadly. Let's look at the community. What does facilitation at scale may look like? Well, first of all, this is the same item that we have in our call to action, is improving trust, safety, and collegiality. And I have to thank those of you who have been doing incredible work. I don't see the team here, but if Maggie, if James, if you are online, you've been doing amazing work. Since the beginning of this year, we've started programs on both child protection and trust and safety. These programs are in flight. There's a lot of work to be done, but they're extremely important. Second one, improve curation experience and grow capacity for content quality and breadth. What does that mean? That means that we need better tools for our editors, but not just around editing, but about curation and content quality, and ensuring that so that they can process that faster, including machine learning algorithms. And that's thanks to Aaron. I am looking forward to seeing that the algorithm for ref scoring really productized and deployed across the wikis. We need to scale content donation programs to partnerships and movement. These are our GLAM programs. They're still ad hoc, and while volunteers are doing incredible work, oftentimes that content is bogged down on upload. How do we make it easier? What do we need to do there? And how can we facilitate those programs better? They already exist. How do we give them better support? And finally, knowledge itself. At the end of the day, that's what we're here for. And creating modern and easy-to-use APIs for creating and consuming this content is really important. We've started some work there. The Discovery team delivered the first API for getting the content of Wikidata, for example. The multimedia team is working on improved uploading of content, especially pictures and images. So again, there's some work that we have always done, we know we need to do there, but that's one possible focus area. Delivering diversity in our content experience, like languages, videos, voices, maps. Again, a couple of them we're already starting to put in place. The language team has done amazing work, and thanks to Layla, we can possibly double the productivity or double the translations of our key languages. We can possibly bring some of the underrepresented languages much faster up to full volume. Maps, again, the Discover team just completed the Maps integration a little while ago. And one more idea is improving tools to support community and reduce manual work. Again, very, very important. How do we, with the increased volume and knowledge, how do we ensure that our communities can actually focus on the things that they love to do and can do best? And how do we automate the tasks that shouldn't even be manually done? So those are just ideas. I'm putting them in front of you as a draft. They show you how the synthesis of the strategy is coming together, what it might look like, and we're going to go into a very heavy iteration for the next couple of months to getting all of yours and community feedback to help us understand if this is how much of this needs to change, how far off target or on target this might be. And at the end of the day, all of you, this type of strategy belongs to all of you. It's pointless unless each and every one of you knows how to make those decisions and makes the right decisions every day, many times a day. So how do you prioritize? How do you decide what is more important than the next? And we're thinking about how do we provide that framework, and this is some ideas of how we were thinking about it. But then at the end of the day, all we can do is provide a general frame. What would be really important is that you make those decisions and you make those trade-offs on an everyday basis. And one of the ways that we're thinking about is how much are we spending on core today, how much are we spending on experimentation. You've seen this before. This has been in front of you, but it will be really important to really identify what is core, what is missing. And again, this is up to you. So what are our next steps? As I mentioned, we need directions and feedback, including, and most importantly right now, the board's feedback. We need the direction and feedback from staff, and we need to start working on developing actual goals for the next year. What are the things that we want to get done? Maybe we want mobile visual editor. Maybe we want to scale language translation programs. Maybe we want to work on GLAM. Let's get together and make sure that we have our ideas in the right place and we have them prioritized. And of course, our communities need to be involved in that. So my call to action to you as I close this off, we're going to need support for this. And I would love to ask you to join the platypus team. Is that what we call it? To join the platypus team. Please email me if you want to be part of the team that facilitates this, because it will require quite a bit of triage and work going over the next 3 months. So if you are interested in being active participant in making the strategy happen and making the strategy tune, please send me an email. We're going to be looking to get this done in about a week time. And Luis and I are looking at it with a lot of intensity. So we're gonna need your support. Okay. Thank you. Next.
Well, that's a tough act to follow. Oh. Because that went into such depth, and I think actually because Jimmy and Lila gave a much better community update with some of those awesome stories from Spain than I can ever give. I'm going to go through this a little more quickly than usual, but what Jake said at the beginning about the sort of why do people give, I want to call out some of these stories here. Wikimisiones, Misiones is a province in the northeast corner of Argentina. It's got about 1 million people. They just celebrated their 400th anniversary as sort of as a region. So they had an editathon of 1,000 students, right? So imagine so that's 1 out of every 1,000 people in the province was writing articles, right? Imagine if that math worked, if we had 1 out of every 1,000 Americans or 1 out of every 1,000 Indians writing articles, that math would be amazing, right? It's still pretty amazing here too, right? Why, right? It's because this is an opportunity to tell their own story, right? This is, I think, one of the most powerful motivations for so many of us, including a lot of the stories we heard at the beginning, right? And this is despite poor connectivity, a lot of writing articles beforehand and uploading them. I mean, we sort of take this for granted that, of course, the first thing we do is open up a browser and start writing. That's actually not the case for a lot of people here, and not the case here, right? Creating articles in advance, talking with teachers, it's a different world out there, and not always the experience that we have when we're editing together at our editathons every month in this room, right? Serbia. How many of you would guess that editing wikis is in the national curriculum in Serbia? All right, so some folks know, right? Like, this is actually, again, because of the actions of volunteers who have been educating and working in this area. It's now they've got 100 teachers being trained in the past few months to help their kids with wikis, right? To learn that kind of those kinds of skills, right? And to get involved. Over here in the US, we recently had a wiki conference. I'm going to skim through this real quick, but I did want to call out one particular thing. Gender gap was a big theme here, right? This is something that that I think many of us in this room know is an issue. It's been really refreshing to me to see, that in many ways we're actually being led, right? The community is thinking big and aggressive on some of these issues and thinking hard about how they can address this, right? And so that was great for me to see coming out of WikiCon. We had, I love these, that's Patricio, you can't quite see. Sometimes we wonder, well, do these prizes are cool. I think a lot of people around the office who actually watched the live stream. Yeah, which I was in a meeting, unfortunately, I misscheduled that. We sort of wonder, like, how does this feed back, right? And we had a very cool example out of Spain. The prize was announced. The press literally called the chapter and was like, can we find out some more about this? They talked to a Wikipedian in residence and got media coverage for a GLAM event in Madrid, right? Like, these kinds of things, they're not just, it's fun that they're awesome recognition for us, but they also have really positive feedback loops for those communities. Again, trying to go quickly through these because of the time, we had some awesome, again, GLAM, focus on gender, a lot of articles, and museums recognizing, again, where the best way to, when you have a collection in New York, it's going to be seen by millions of people. When you share that collection on Wikipedia, it's going to be seen by hundreds of millions of people, right? And museums are starting to recognize that. Feedback survey, I think we're just going to skip this one today because I cannot do it justice in the time involved. I want to talk a little bit about project milestones, right? I think most of us, how many of you knew that over the weekend, 5 million articles in English Wikipedia? So how many of you knew that within the last few months, Hindi Wikipedia hit 100,000 articles? So if you didn't know that, let me put in context why that's a big deal, right? Hindi is spoken by around 5% of the world's population, right? So this is a huge, that 5 millionth article in English is awesome and we should all be proud of it, but we also make a huge impact in other languages when we make these kinds of, that 100,000th article there makes an impact for a huge portion of the world that doesn't necessarily have a ton of content online as much as we are spoiled to as English speakers, right? Wikidata is hit their 3-year anniversary this year, 15 million items. How many of you have played with the Wikidata game? Yeah, all right, quite a few of you. I admit I spent a good chunk of the weekend sitting in front of the football on one screen and Wikidata on the other screen. It was, I only had to revert like the edits. And those are some big milestones that were just hit lately. Odeo with 10K. We keep trucking along, folks. This is really amazing. It's both these personal stories that we led off with and these big aggregate impacts that we have are, I think, really powerful. And it's always good it's at least good for me to remember that. So on that note, I'm going to hand it off to Edward real quick to talk a little bit about understanding more details.
I just broke it. All right, so I think it's fine. All right, so my name is Edward Galvez. I am survey specialist in the community engagement department. And I'm actually not really here to talk to you about surveys. No, it's just not.
Here, I can be human clicker for a bit.
Thank you.
This is the right screen.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Louis. So not here to talk to you about surveys. I'm actually here to talk to you about, slide, listening to communities, because surveys are really more of a tool to actually, to that endpoint, which is to listen to communities. And of course, next slide, we have a lot of different communities, as you can see. This obviously doesn't cover all of it and doesn't cover the different countries and places around the world. And your community, in whatever department you're in, is the people who you create products and services for. And service can be a way to improve what you create with and for community in a more systematic way. And my role is to coordinate learning about doing surveys in the Wikimedia way. And so I'm going to practice my community engagement muscle, and since you are my community, I'm going to engage you in a little exercise. I know a lot of you are on your laptops. If you can just look up just for 1 second. Next slide. So if you can get a show of hands really high up, how many of you have ever created a survey? Really high. Awesome, wow. Pretty much everyone. Next slide. All right, so who here feels they've created a pretty good survey? Raise your hand really, really high. Awesome. I got this now. And who here knows how I actually define pretty good? Who here knows what I even meant by survey? And so the point of this little poll is that people will answer your questions, whether you have good questions or not, right? And so if you don't have good questions, you might have bad data. If you have bad data, you might really not be able to make really good decisions. Sorry, All right. I have to hold two different things. Okay. And so what I want to talk to you really quickly is about 3 common lessons in 3 months as a survey specialist. I just came into this role in a few months ago. The first one is to know your goals and decisions that you need to make. That will really help you to focus your questions a lot better. If you don't know your goals and decisions, it's hard to really write questions. Second, know who is your specific audience. Who is it who you want to reach, and how are you going to reach them? If you don't know that, maybe the survey or big survey you're not really ready for that. Maybe you want to do a different kind of survey. You want to do focus groups or interviews or something else. And third, test your questions. Test your questions with your colleagues. Test your questions with the actual people you're going to be surveying. And then test it also once it's actually in the final form in Google Forms or Qualtrics or whatever you're using. And that is not the end of the road about learning to learn about surveys. And so I want to introduce the Survey Support Desk. This is on Meta, and it's for both staff and community alike. And this portal it's going to be, right now it's a skeleton. There's enough information there for you to start exploring, but it's going to be building up, and we're going to have a lot more information about how to start from strategy all the way to the end of, thanking users for taking your survey and analyzing the data. And so if you have any questions about surveys, consult this. You can also email me at surveys@wikimedia. But if you're planning any large surveys, please give me at least a few weeks in advance. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Neil P. Quinn. I'm a product analyst in the editing department, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some metrics that we use. So this is a graph of monthly active editors across all our projects. It's pretty well known, and in fact, somebody told me that the metrics meeting started way back when, essentially as a collective freak out about the state of this graph. So you've probably seen this before. But there is one problem with active editors as one big number, which is that it's kind of a blunt instrument. It doesn't necessarily tell us a lot about who these active editors are, where they came from, what's driving their participation. So what we should do is break it down. I looked for that picture specifically. So one of the things we can use to do this is the editor model, which was dreamed up last year by Aaron Halfaker and Toby Negrin. And what it does essentially is break down active editor into 4 major groups. First, up at the top, we have new active editors, people who registered this month and made 5 edits this month, so they're just getting their feet wet in the project. Surviving new active editors. These are people who registered last month, made 5 edits last month, and stuck around to make 5 edits or more again this month. There's recurring old active editors. So, people who were active this month, were active last month, and registered sometime before that. So these are kind of the ongoing, continuing core of the project. And then we have reactivated editors, people who were active this month but weren't active last month. So these are people who are kind of coming back from a hiatus of some kind. So when we break down active editor numbers into these 4 groups, we can start to see some interesting patterns. For example, here's the breakdown of active editors on the English Wikipedia over time. There are a lot of interesting things about this graph. One I find particularly interesting is that new active editors is a pretty big band of green, but surviving active editors is just a small yellow sliver, which tells us that most of the people who make 5 edits in every given month don't stick around. If we look at Japanese Wikipedia, the pattern is fairly similar as well, although you can see that new and surviving active editors make up a bit of a smaller chunk than they do on the English Wikipedia. Here's Portuguese Wikipedia, fairly similar pattern as well. So absolute numbers like this are definitely interesting, but they do have one flaw, which is that they're not easy to compare between wikis. On the graphs I just showed, the English Wikipedia graph and the Portuguese Wikipedia graph are about the same size, but if I put them together on one side at the same scale, the English Wikipedia graph would be about 30 times higher. So one thing we can do about this is borrow a little bit from elementary school math and use rates instead of absolute numbers. So here's an example of how that works. This is a breakdown of active editors on the Portuguese Wikipedia in one random month. We have a big chunk of recurring editors in blue, reactivated editors in red, new editors in green, and this little sliver in the middle that's our surviving editors. So where do these people come from? Well, to be a surviving editor this month, you had to have been a new editor last month. So that's kind of our source population, 673 new editors last month. Unfortunately, most of these people didn't stick around for a second month. In fact, only 16.8% of them did. That 16.8% is our survival rate, and it's a bit discouraging, but it is something we can compare across wikis. So this is the breakdown of rates on the English Wikipedia. At the bottom, we have new editor activation in blue. That's the rate at which we convert new signups into active editors in the same month. Above that, there's new active survival in red, which is what I was just talking about. And then we have old active survival in yellow, which is kind of the rate at which existing editors stick around from month to month. Now, if we compare that to the Japanese Wikipedia, the relative distribution of the rates is pretty similar. But if you look at it, each rate is about 5 to 10 percentage points higher than the corresponding rate on the English Wikipedia. Now, that's pretty interesting, and it certainly seems like a good sign for the Japanese Wikipedia community. I don't really know why that is, but it's an interesting question, and we know to ask it because of the edit model. All right, that's it for metrics. So I'm going to hand it over to another guy in gray pants and a blue shirt to talk about content translation.
Thank you, Ned. Okay, my name is Sandosh. I'm from the language engineering team. Today I'm going to present some highlights about the awesome content translation tool. I'll be quick. Content translation is a computer-assisted translation tool for translating content between languages to address many of the problems we discussed a few minutes back about the imbalance between the content existing. I'll start with some quick facts. This development started early 2014. It was first deployed as a beta feature in Catalan Wikipedia on January 2015, and it was deployed again as a beta feature in all Wikipedia by July 18th of 2015. So the team is pretty much small, only one full-time engineer, one part-time software engineer. That's it. I'll go to the quick highlights as of October 2015. So as of now, in every 7 minutes, a new Wikipedia article is born out of this tool. And in every week, 1,500 new articles are created. So I want to repeat that this is still a beta feature, okay? And every day, 200 articles are created. To put these things in perspective, in Spanish Wikipedia, that is one of the top 10 Wikipedia, every day 200 articles are created. So this is almost equivalent to the same productivity of Spanish Wikipedia. Also similar to the Italian Wikipedia, where every day about 200 articles are created. So the productivity is same as what you see in Italian or Spanish Wikipedia. 30,000 new Wikipedia articles are created so far. So that is like bigger than the whole Gujarati Wikipedia and even close to the whole Swahili Wikipedia. And all these things are by 7,800 beta feature users. So I want to again repeat that it's still beta feature. So quickly going through the graph, how the translations are going. From 2015 January onwards, the graph is going quickly upwards. We have a steady rate of like 200 translations per day and 1,500 translations per week. And what you see on the gray line is the translations in progress. So we allow translations to be done in multiple steps. You can save it and work on later and publish again later. This is the weekly trend of how every week translations are going. We also need to consider the deletion rate because not all published articles are there in the wiki. It's getting deleted, right? So this is deletion rate of Catalan Wikipedia. About 2% of the articles are getting deleted. And if you compare this with the English Wikipedia, about 20% of the articles are deleted. But you need to note that I think in English Wikipedia, the deletion rate is for the articles that are created from scratch, I think it's nearly 40%. So this is an indication of the quality of the content created using content translation. So most of the articles published are going to be present there. Few things in progress. We are working with the research team about the suggestion mechanism or article recommendation system to give an suggestion to the translators that this article is missing in this language, you may want to translate this. So we are running an experiment on this, and we are going to have some support inside the tool to organize translation campaigns. Something like every Wikimedia community can organize some campaigns to fill the gap of articles from translating from other articles, other languages. And we are working on adding more machine translation engine support. As of now, we have Persian. We are going to get more language support very soon. And I think that's it. I think it's time for Q&A now.
a big thank you to all our presenters. That was fantastic. And we'll start with Q&A from IRC. There are no questions from IRC. So if you have, not yet, if you have a question, we'd ask you to please just go to the microphone right over there. Just queue up. And you have many knowledgeable people to Oh, we have an IRC question.
Yes, by saying aloud that we didn't have any questions from IRC, I caused us to have questions from So this is a question from Matt Flashen, who asks, what's the kind of machine translation backends that are going to be coming soon? So this is translation, sorry.
Yeah, the question is what are the machine translation backends and what's going to come soon. So we have the open source machine translation engine, Apertium, running in our cluster as one of the machine translation engine. What is being considered and what is going to come soon, and we are preparing the announcement and final stage of comment is about the Yandex machine translation service. And we might have announcement and detailed information about that by next week. Thank you.
What we found out when we were looking into this is that different languages have different translation tools. So for example, Google Translate is really, really bad for like Japanese and Korean. So it's really going to depend on which language pairs the team chooses. So we're looking for many to plug into.
Anything else from IRC, James?
There's another one from James Hare. Are there any plans to deploy content translation for things like Wikidata descriptions to prompt people for all the different places that aren't just articles to translate?
Wikidata descriptions, nothing planned as of now. No, nothing planned on that direction as of now.
All right, let's take some from the mic. Hey, Dario.
Is it working? Yes. Dario from research. First off, language team. These are crazy good numbers. Congratulations. And then a question for Ed about surveys. Can we start sending researchers, not just community members, to you in droves?
Oh,
For surveys.
surveys,
Ah.
rows. If your staff is willing to, I don't know. I guess we could talk about it.
Sati?
So my question actually to Lila on the strategy update that you gave. So it seems like right now the hypothesis is that our technological solutions are going to be the majority of how we're going to address our challenges. And I wanted to understand to what extent you think that that's obviously necessary but sufficient. So when do we kind of shift focus to look at the non-technological solutions?
Actually, I must have not explained it well enough then. I don't believe technology only is good as long as it supports something that's meaningful and practices that are meaningful. So as much as I would like to say that technology will, save the world, I actually don't think so. I think we need to decide what is that our communities are doing, and what do we need to do for them to make it to make the technology work. And communities using that word broadly, right? A community in South Africa that's just coming online is also a community, even though they're not on Wikipedia yet. So I was actually thinking more when we were talking about building communities, building knowledge, is about programs like GLAM, about programs like education. How do we really make them work at a much broader scale? How do we enable things like what we just looked at, museums to put their gallery collections on Wikipedia and to continue to add to them as they acquire new art, for example. So I believe that the strategy will be very much program focused and content focused, knowledge focused, and the technology is going to be important insofar as it can help us reach farther and engage deeper.
Anything else going on in IRC, James?
There's a question, doesn't seem to be quite the right term, but a point that when you say, Lila, when you say our GLAM projects, they're not actually done by the foundation itself.
I mean, as our community,
Yep.
all of us.
Cool. Thanks.
Good point.
Sure.
Do we have any other questions? We have a lovely lunch provided by, or served by. I'm not supposed to say that. Other questions? One more from IRC.
Lila, there's a question from Pete Forsyth saying that in 2010, there was a 5-year strategic plan process that took about $1 million and a bunch of time to do it. And what you described seems to be much more kind of internally originated. And is that a deliberate change of emphasis for a particular reason? Is it just not being seen in the same way? I mean, how should we see it?
No, actually, so interesting. It's an interesting question. We were trying to design a much more what do you call iterative process. Actually, the board has asked me in the beginning to make the process more incremental rather than have like a 5-year plan like they used to have in Soviet Union. Sorry, 5 years and 4 years, you know, we had to deliver. No, it's because we need to be able to adjust. You know, the things that you saw today, this incredible work that these teams are doing, they're learning every day. And we need to give them flexibility to learn, to make changes to their thinking and to adjust. But what we do need is, as a community, and as us, the community, not us, the WMF, us, the community, to make sure that we're setting the right objectives in front of our teams. So what our goal was, is to run a very extensive program, including a community consultation that actually yielded more collaborators than the one that we ran for $1 million by outsourcing the process. We insourced it because we wanted to be the ones that are talking to our community members, talking to people outside of the foundation, and talking internally about it. We wanted this process to really be owned by all of us, not just us at WMF, but us as a wider community. And we wanted to be adjustable so that when somebody somewhere, including here at WMF, or a volunteer who is experimenting somewhere across the world, figures out or finds out something new that works much better, we can change. The strategy can emerge based on that learning. We're a learning organization, we're a learning movement. We need a strategy that's flexible enough for us to be able to adjust. Okay?
All right, thanks everyone. We're going to wrap up. Appreciate everyone online watching and all the staff and all the speakers. Thank you very much. And our guest, Jimmy, thank you for being here. That's it.